A billionaire in worn shoes is praised as wise. A poor man in the same shoes is dismissed as lazy. The act is identical, but the judgment is not. Context changes everything, and those without power always pay the price. Centuries ago, Machiavelli uncovered this illusion. He showed how image and perception decide who commands respect and who is ignored, no matter the truth behind it. In this video, we'll break down his insights and reveal why the disguise of modesty protects the strong but destroys the weak, and how you can use appearance as a weapon instead of a weakness. Stay until the end, because this shift in perspective will change how the world responds to you. The world sorts you in seconds. Eyes scan, judge, and decide if you matter. You are packaging on a shelf, and if you look like nothing, you're treated like nothing. Kindness, talent, even brilliance mean nothing if your image signals weakness. Play humble before you have power, and you won't be respected, you'll be erased. The rich wear modesty as strategy, to disarm envy, to lower defenses, to observe unnoticed. The poor wear it as surrender, an apology for existing without wealth. They call it humility, but it makes them invisible. No one fears them. No one envies them. No one listens. That's the trap. The same act changes meaning depending on who performs it. A king's silence is power. A beggar's silence is weakness. A queen barefoot is grace. A servant barefoot is expected. Same gesture, opposite judgment. You've been trained to disappear, told that modesty is virtue. But what if that lie is why you're still struggling? The rich didn't get wealthy by hiding, they got wealthy, then hid. Their humility is camouflage, a weapon. If you wear it without leverage, it won't protect you. It will bury you. When the rich look poor, it's theater. They choose it. And choice is the difference. The poor have no choice, their modesty clings to them like skin. That's why one man in worn shoes is called wise, and another is dismissed as worthless. The mask that shields the powerful becomes a death sentence for the powerless. A wealthy investor walks in wearing sandals and a hoodie. The press calls it genius. The boardroom calls it charm. No one questions him. He's eccentric, authentic, untouchable. Now picture a job applicant in the same clothes. He's called lazy, unprepared, unserious. One man's rebellion is another man's rejection. That's the invisible line you have to see. Camouflage only works after power is secured. When your strength is obvious, even silence has weight. But if you haven't built anything yet, modesty isn't strategy, it's suicide. You're told to downplay yourself, to stay humble, to wait for the world to notice. But the world doesn't reward humility. It rewards power disguised as humility. Without power, the costume consumes you. You become background noise, a harmless shadow no one fears or follows. What you thought was protection is actually erasure. The elites know this. They build empires in silence, hiding strength only after it's undeniable. Their quiet isn't doubt, it's dominance preserved. But for you, silence early in the climb is dangerous. It creates hesitation, lets others define you, and by the time you finally rise to speak, the room has already labeled you disposable. This is how the rich weaponize modesty. Not as morality, but as control. They let the world underestimate them so they can strike without warning. They praise frugality to manipulate the hungry. They glorify minimalism so no one asks where the money went. They preach simplicity while living lives of extreme complexity. And you buy it. You imitate them, thinking the costume will give you the same results. But you forget one truth: they had power before they ever wore the mask. You don't need camouflage. You need visibility. You need to be seen, heard, respected. That doesn't come from shrinking, it comes from carrying weight, shifting gravity the moment you enter a room. The rich can vanish because their influence lingers like perfume. But if you vanish, nothing remains. No one asks where you went, because you never claimed your place to begin with. They told you humility was noble. But look closely. Do silent workers rise? Do invisible men get power? Or is it the loud, the bold, the visible who ascend while the quiet are passed over, forgotten under the myth of humility? Humility before power isn't a virtue. It's a leash. And the rich helped weave it. Because when a poor man is humble, it's expected. Invisible. Worthless. But when a rich man is humble, the world applauds. So rich, yet so simple. Not because he's simple, but because he could choose not to be. His humility is power disguised as modesty. Yours is surrender. Yours is a condition. And society never rewards what it expects, it rewards what surprises. That's why the same gesture becomes two different stories. A king's silence is wisdom, a beggar's silence is weakness. The myth of humility only works in hindsight. If you win, they call you patient, discreet, disciplined. If you fail, they say you lacked ambition, that you didn't want it enough. Humility is not a strategy, it's a gamble. And unless you already hold power, it's a bet you will lose. Modesty without status looks like weakness. Silence without strength looks like fear. Poverty with humility looks like irrelevance. The rich praise humility but don't practice it when it matters. They flex in negotiations, they shout when deals must close, they wield names, networks, reputations. Only after the throne is secure do they grow quiet, let the myth spread, and let the poor believe they rose through virtue. It's a lie, useful, beautiful, dangerous. A lie that keeps the hungry small. Because once you start to believe that blending in is noble, you stop reaching. You think ambition is greed. You call hiding discipline. You confuse silence with strength. But here's the truth, you don't lose because you're poor. You lose because you accept invisibility. Ask yourself, if you died tomorrow, who would notice beyond a few days? That fear in your chest, that's the cost of hiding. While you wait, someone louder, bolder, less afraid of being seen takes what should have been yours. Not because he's better, because he refused to be invisible. History proves it. A Roman emperor wore a plain wool cloak, praised as wise and grounded. But behind him marched guards, spies, alliances. The cloak wasn't humility, it was strategy. He knew if he looked too grand, he'd be feared, too poor, ignored, just humble enough, admired. That balance made him untouchable. Elites today follow the same pattern. Steve Jobs' black turtleneck, Zuckerberg's gray t-shirt, Buffett's modest house, none of it was necessity. It was armor. Illusion of restraint. Behind it sits a mountain of influence. Modern royalty does the same, black cars, subdued suits, polished speech. Power now hides in clean lines and quiet smiles. Because the king who roars is dangerous, but the king who whispers is terrifying. His moves are invisible. His enemies can't prepare. Generals know this. They don't wear medals on the front line, they wear camouflage. The most dangerous man is the one who looks like no one. That logic runs through business, politics, finance. A billionaire flaunting wealth draws enemies. A billionaire blending in moves freely. Real wealth isn't shown, it moves silently behind the curtain. But here's the difference, their disguise works because they already have power. When they choose to reveal themselves, the world listens. Their names shift mountains. Their networks demand respect. Simplicity amplifies them. For the powerless, it does the opposite. A man with no name and plain clothes isn't seen as disciplined, he's seen as average. A woman with no platform speaking softly isn't seen as composed, she's forgotten. Simplicity without leverage doesn't signal strength. It signals surrender. That's the trap, copying the performance without the preparation. Wearing the cloak without building the army beneath it. Power is never patient. Kings don't wait. Billionaires don't wait. Emperors don't wait. They act simple, but their ambition is ruthless. Their networks are vast, their moves complex. They don't pretend to be poor, they pretend to be harmless. And that illusion works only because their power is already undeniable. The trap is slower for you. It coils like a rope, one harmless choice at a time. You think, I'll stay quiet. I'll build in silence. Modesty will protect me. But while you hide, others step forward. While you dress down, others signal presence. While you whisper, others thunder. By the time you realize, the room has already decided who matters, and it isn't you. That's the irony. The more the poor copy simplicity, the more invisible they become. The rich vanish and still echo. When you vanish, you're erased. You can't play invisible until you've made yourself unforgettable. I've seen brilliant men fade into mediocrity, not from lack of skill but from lack of presence. They dressed like they didn't care, spoke like they didn't matter, moved like they had nothing to prove. The world believed them. Silence became proof, plainness became confirmation, and the door closed. Opportunity never knocks twice, and it never knocks on invisible doors. The poor think looking simple makes them trustworthy. It makes them replaceable. The rich already bought their way out of the game, they can pretend, you can't. Every glance, every judgment is your test, and no one waits for your explanations. The world is too fast. That's why elites push the myth. Influencers telling you to stay grounded, CEOs preaching frugality, millionaires filming minimalism in mansions. It's not advice, it's containment. Because the moment you sharpen your image, raise your voice, claim space, they lose control. Imitation without context is suicide. You copy the shell but forget the foundation. The rich earn the right to hide. You're still climbing. Still proving. Still invisible by default. If you wear their costume without their power, you don't become mysterious. You disappear. You don't become mysterious. You become forgettable. The truth is harsh, you cannot afford to look poor. Not until your name carries weight. Not until your silence screams. Not until you've built something the world cannot ignore. Until then, every second you blend in is a second you bury your chances. You think you're buying safety, but you're paying for irrelevance. The crowd will never admit it, but they worship wealth. In public they curse the rich as greedy and corrupt. In private, they fantasize about switching places. This contradiction, envy and admiration colliding, is the force you must understand. Because logic doesn't shape your fate. Perception does. And envy is the sharpest weapon of all. Dressing down won't shield you. It marks you as weak. And weakness isn't respected, it's tolerated at best, crushed at worst. People don't envy the humble. They ignore them. And indifference is deadlier than hate. Hate keeps you visible. Indifference erases you. The elites know this. They don't hide from envy, they weaponize it. They show just enough, the mansion glimpsed from afar, the photo without the process, the lifestyle framed as effortless. Envy hooks attention, and attention is power. The crowd obsesses over what it can't reach, and the rich make sure to stay just out of reach. That's why simplicity, in their hands, becomes a paradox. The crowd sees a billionaire in a hoodie and thinks, he's just like me. But deep down they know he isn't, and that tension, the illusion of sameness wrapped around undeniable difference, creates influence. People pretend to admire modesty, but they follow dominance. They follow confidence, command, style, presence. And presence is visual first. Genius means nothing if you dress like a ghost. Character doesn't matter if you blend into the wall. The world is too fast to stop and discover you. You must demand to be seen. The masses don't hand out attention, they give it to those who take it. And envy grows sharpest when the contrast is undeniable. When someone who looks like a king walks among peasants, heads turn, hearts race. That reaction, jealousy, curiosity, admiration, is the seed of power. You may fear envy, but it's necessary. Envy means they see you. Envy means they feel you. That's why the rich walk softly but carry thunder. If you think looking poor will spare you, you're wrong. The moment you rise, they'll envy you anyway, no matter how quiet, modest, or humble you try to be. So control the projection. Let them see power, not pity. Fear, not forgetfulness. Because every room sorts itself the instant you enter. Eyes scan, signals register, judgments fall. Before you speak a word, you've been filed, alpha or background, threat or extra. Clothes speak. Posture speaks. Silence speaks. And if you look weak, tired, invisible, you are placed at the bottom, and once you're there, escape is nearly impossible. Even among the poor, hierarchy rules. A man who wears his poverty with style commands more respect than one who surrenders to it. A sharp haircut, clean shoes, upright posture, these create illusion, and illusion is often stronger than truth. You don't need millions to project presence, but you do need awareness. The game is being played whether you join it or not. Refusing only guarantees your place at the bottom. The elites know this instinctively. That's why they invest in presence even as they preach simplicity. They understand power is performance. A millionaire can drive a basic car, but only after his reputation, business, and network prove his worth. Without those, the car is just a car. Status amplifies simplicity. Without status, simplicity is emptiness. Humans are animals. We size each other up instantly, who leads, who follows, who matters, who doesn't. In the jungle of modern life, appearance is your roar. Mute it, and you become prey. The world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards presence. If your look says, "I'm nobody," the world will believe you. There are men with less money who command more respect because they turned what little they had into signal. They polished their image not for vanity but for survival, because they knew that looking broke means being treated as broken. Once you're seen that way, you're trapped in perception's cage. No amount of skill or soul will free you unless you first change how you're seen. So ask yourself, what do people notice when you enter a room? Are you projecting command or invisibility? Rising, or being filed into the bottom rung by silent eyes that never gave you a chance? If you don't master appearance, someone with less talent but more image will take your place. Opportunity doesn't knock on every door, only on the doors it can see. Blend in, dress down, move like a shadow, and you become invisible to the very forces that could change your life. This is the hidden cost no one tells you about. Every job you don't get, every meeting you miss, every connection that never forms, not because you lack skill, but because you never looked like someone worth choosing. Invisibility is not neutral. It is a tax. And the poor pay it daily. Decision makers don't have time to vet everyone. They judge fast, signals, presence, confidence, polish. They bet on what looks like it can win and discard what looks like it's already lost. You may think the world will reward your heart, your loyalty, your brilliance. But it won't, unless you force it to. Unless your appearance, your energy, your image demand attention. Because if you dress like a ghost, move like a whisper, wait like a beggar, no one will come. Not because you're unworthy, but because they never knew you existed. Pretending to be poor is fatal. It teaches the world to treat you as disposable. It lowers your price tag in every room. It whispers weakness where you need to scream value. It shuts doors you didn't know were open. It erases mentions of your name. It turns allies into strangers, mentors into passers-by, opportunities into silence. And the worst part? You won't even notice. You'll just feel stuck, invisible, cursed, wondering why nothing moves while the answer stares back at you in the mirror. Don't mistake this for vanity. It isn't about buying expensive clothes or faking wealth. It's about controlling your signal. Owning your narrative. Broadcasting your presence in a world trained to ignore silence. Every day you walk past a gatekeeper unnoticed, you lose ground. Every moment you look powerless, you train the world to treat you that way. And those moments stack into years, into missed paths, into a life half-lived. The rich know this. They don't just build wealth. They build signal. They construct presence, their look, their space, their tone, their timing. Not for ego, but for power. Because the world rewards those who look like they belong at the table. Once they arrive, they can afford invisibility. But not before. Never before. So if you've been playing small, dressing down, hiding in crowds, muting your voice in the name of humility, understand, you're not being noble. You're cutting yourself off from access. Burning bridges before they exist. Paying the highest price for the lowest return. And the world doesn't applaud the invisible. It forgets them. You don't need millions to look like power. You don't need a throne to walk with gravity. What you need is control over the way the world sees you. Every powerful man you admire mastered this before wealth or titles. They learned to appear inevitable before their names carried weight. That's the counter-strategy, to use image as a weapon, not a weakness. Start with posture. Enter a room slowly. Don't fidget. Don't rush. Hold silence longer than most can endure. That tension is control. Weak men fill space with noise. Strong men create space, and others obey. Next, eye contact, stillness, measured movement. These tools cost nothing, yet they pay in respect. Even without money, if you look like you know something others don't, you'll be treated as if you do. Then your clothing. It doesn't need to be expensive. It needs to be intentional. Fit over flash. Simplicity over chaos. Clean shoes, sharp lines, neutral colors. Not to look rich, but to signal order. To show, I govern myself. Those who appear in control of themselves are assumed to control more. And perception follows assumption. Finally, your words. Use them like blades. Speak less, say more. Don't explain unless it's strategic. Don't overshare. Mystery is leverage. If they can't read you, they can't predict you. And what can't be predicted, can't be controlled. Speak with weight. Use deliberate tones. Let silence hang after your words until others rush to fill it. That's how the powerful move. They don't chase understanding, they command it. And above all, energy. Presence is felt before it's seen. Are you rushed and apologetic, or calm and unshakable? People don't follow credentials, they follow certainty, even if it's an illusion. Walk as if your path is already carved. As if you belong because you decided you do. That conviction is armor. Money and titles can be taken, but conviction cannot, unless you surrender it. This is how you rise without riches. How you dominate without war. Move like your future self already exists, and the world will adjust. Because perception, repeated, becomes reputation, and reputation opens doors that credentials never could. The rich mastered this before they had proof. They behaved as if success had already happened, and the world, unsettled but compelled, made room for them. So stop waiting for wealth to validate you. Stop waiting for status to grant permission. Signal power before it's confirmed. That's the game. That's how invisibility becomes intimidation. You're not faking, you're forecasting. One deceives. The other dares the world to believe. And never pretend to be poor, not for safety, sympathy, or strategy. The world forgets it's a disguise and treats it as truth. It pays you less, respects you less, listens less. Worst of all, it remembers you that way. Once you dull your shine, the world locks you into weakness, and it won't reset when you're ready to rise again. This is the final law: never surrender your image. Power is sticky, and so is weakness. Wear it once, and it clings. People will project it onto every word, every room, every chance that could have been yours. You'll fight twice as hard just to be seen again. There is no glory in being ignored. No dignity in being mistaken for powerless. You think pretending to be poor protects you from envy, from judgment, from attention you're not ready for. But no one envies the invisible. No one fears the unthreatening. And if you think silence will save you, you've already lost. The world doesn't punish volume, it punishes weakness. It doesn't fear arrogance, it fears competence. The sharp, the bold, the unapologetic are the ones who command. Pretend to be poor, and you train yourself to accept less, train others to expect less. You invite disrespect disguised as simplicity. You erase yourself and call it humility. And for what? To fit in? To be safe? There is no safety in submission, only slower defeat. Kings don't fall because they lose money. They fall because they forget to carry themselves like kings. They explain. They apologize. They blend with the crowd they once ruled. And the moment that happens, the spell breaks. The greatest tragedy isn't poverty. It's disappearing while you're still alive. Men waste decades blending in, softening their edges, lowering their voice, hoping that patience will be rewarded. But history shows the opposite: the invisible are erased. The silent are buried. The humble are forgotten. Power demands a signal. If you refuse to send it, others will assign you a place at the bottom and keep you there. This is not about money. It's about presence. About refusing to walk through life as a shadow. About forcing the room to acknowledge that you exist, with posture, with command, with image, with certainty. Because the world only respects what it cannot ignore. And if you keep disguising yourself as nothing, then nothing is exactly what you'll get. So understand this: modesty is not a virtue until it rests on a throne. Until then, it is a cage. Break it. Step forward. Choose weight over weakness, visibility over silence, command over apology. And if you want to know how to weaponize these truths, how to design your presence the way rulers design empires, continue with the playlist Machiavelli on Power as Design. There, you'll see how strategy turns into signal, and how signal becomes power.